Hello and welcome back. It is Monday and I am Mr. Sesotris. This week I wanted to do something a little bit different. Since I've kind of moved into this niche of talking about classic books and literary fiction, I didn't want to do just another list of recommendations or a review of something. Although I do have a couple reviews that I want to do. But this week I wanted to talk about the process of active reading. When you're reading a book, they always say like you have to read it twice before you really kind of get it, or you really kind of get the most out of it. Because you know how you'll finish reading a book and you're like, wow, that was a great reading experience, and then someone will ask you, it's like, oh, what's it about? And you're like, I don't know. There's like characters and stuff, and your brain just goes completely blank, and it's like the worst. And so this is something that I came up with when I was a student many years ago, and it's really helped to get through something just once, but like get something out of it and have kind of a more grounded grasp of it, because just reading something once, especially if you're a student, and you're reading something, you're going through like a ton of books and you're reading them frantically to catch up with classes and things, and oftentimes you can't read something more than once. You have to just kind of read it once and then that's it. So this is something that I came up with that really helps for just, you could read something once and you'll get the most out of it. So I'm thinking of the folks who like annotate and tab books. Those folks are amazing. That's a level of commitment to their books that I just can't really comprehend. It's they're on another level. A lot of times they're annotating things that speak to them specifically. So they're pointing out quotes that they find like really beautiful, or character beats that they really love. It's like connecting to the aesthetic of a book and like seeing what speaks to you personally. And there's nothing wrong with that. When you annotate a book, it kind of makes the reread a little more interesting, because as you reread it, then you'll see all your notes kind of to yourself and the tabs and all that stuff. So I'm not talking about tabbing necessarily. And also when you highlight quotes in a book, even if they're really important, it doesn't stick in your head very well. You can highlight something and that only really helps you find the quote later when you're flipping through. So it's not kind of an active reading process, if that makes sense. And so what I'm talking about is a little bit different than that. All right, so what I'm talking about is you're going to be keeping a notebook with you while you're reading, and you're going to be writing down specific quotes that you need to kind of be on the lookout for. And like very specific, there's 3 different kinds of quotes that you need to be on the lookout for. And so I just finished reading Amy Tan's The Bonesetter's Daughter, and so I'm going to be using just the first 3 that I wrote down from this one. With classics, it sometimes can be difficult to focus on like what the plot is. Sometimes it can be something that takes place just within a day. Sometimes there can be quite a bit of stream of consciousness. Sometimes it can be a little like skewed by the character's perception of things. I'm thinking of a book like where is it? The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner. That one, there's one chapter where it's written by a character who's kind of slowly losing it. And as the chapter goes, like the punctuation disappears. And so the book itself kind of falls apart as you're reading it. And so it can be really, really hard to kind of focus on that. And so when you're reading something that is kind of playing with language, or has more dense language or something, it can be a little difficult to follow the actual plot. And so you get really hung up on things and you kind of lose track of things. And so what I want you to do is keep a notebook while you're reading. I promise this is gonna work. And be on the lookout for 3 specific kinds of quotes. The first one is dialogue, either external or internal, where a character mentions something that they want or need. And this can happen multiple times throughout a book. Anytime they say, you know, I wish I had that, I wish I had that, I need this, I'm missing this, something like that, that can be really, really important. So anytime you see a quote where a character talks about something that they need or want, or the narrator or whatever, write it down. So this is an example from The Bonesetter's Daughter. It's from page 5, and it's the character of the mother. And she says, almost all that mattered in my life had disappeared, and the worst is losing precious auntie's name. So one of the themes in the book that kind of goes through the whole thing is this connection to the past, this kind of wanting to connect to the people who are important to you. And so the quest of the book, so to speak, is sort of the quest to figure out what this person's name was. Because it's missing, and that's like a really, really important thing. And so you don't really know that at first. Like it's mentioned early on, but it's brought up later. But if you write down kind of moments where anyone says, this is something that I need, or something that I'm missing, something that I want, write down those quotes, because as you go back to your kind of bank of quotes, you'll be able to kind of chart the character arcs a little better, and it'll kind of cement it in your brain a little bit better. The next kind of quote to be on the lookout for is anytime a character or the narrator makes a statement about what the world is like, what the rules are, what's expected of them. Anytime anyone makes kind of a declarative statement about like, this is the way things are, you want to write those down also. And this is another example from Bonesetter's Daughter. This is from a couple pages later. Let's see here. Okay. It's from page 12. The foghorns continued to wail. They sounded like tubas in a Shostakovich opera, comedically tragic. But was tragedy ever funny? Or was it only the audience who laughed knowingly as the victims walked into trapdoors and trick mirrors? So that is, you know, kind of the all the world's a stage sort of comment. Anything like that. Anytime someone makes a statement. Oh, and there's a cat again. Hi, baby. Anytime a character or the narrator makes a statement about this is what the world is like, or this is how people are, or this is how things are, or this is what's expected of you, anything like that, you want to write those quotes down, because that kind of stuff will give you an idea of what sorts of things is this book focusing on, what kinds of cultural attitudes, what kinds of I don't know, societal expectations is this book kind of exploring or undermining. And in this case, you know, you've got a quote like this, talking about, you know, how do people react to things. And it kind of creates this sense that the main character sort of feels like she's disconnected from everyone else around her. Everyone else is at the opera, you know, laughing at the tragedy, because it's kind of a tragicomedy, and she's like, well, I don't really think that's true, you know, I don't really understand that. I feel, yes, I know, I feel disconnected from everyone else. And so, yes, she has so much to say. She has many opinions today. And so anytime a character makes a statement about the world, or the narrator makes a statement about the world, that's really important to be on the lookout for. So that's the second one. And then finally, the third quote to be on the lookout for, the third kind of quote, is anytime a character or the narrator describes another character. Now, I'm not talking about physical descriptions, or they say like, oh, this character has brown hair. It's not that. It's when they describe who they are. Anytime the narrator says something about a character, or especially another person says something about a character that says like, they're the kind of person who would do this, or they're this type of person, or they value this, or they're afraid of that. Anything that describes the character's personality, character, anything like that. So an example of this third kind of quote is right here. This is from page 10 of Bonesetter's Daughter. And this is the character of Ruth describing her mother. It said, to her mother, just about anything was a sign of ghosts. Broken bowls, barking dogs, phone calls with only silence, or heavy breathing at the other end. So in this one, this is another early quote, but it shows how the character sort of, how she sees her mother, what she sees that her mother values, and the kind of sense that she thinks her mother is sort of this superstitious person who's very caught up in sort of old world beliefs and folklore and all that kind of stuff. And so seeing how other characters see other characters, there's got to be a better way to word that, seeing how a person is perceived by the other people in their life, there we go, that's better, we made it. That will tell you a lot about where characters are in their journey. First, it'll show if there's any kind of disconnect between what they think they are and what they really are, then you'll kind of get a sense of that. But it's kind of, it's good to be aware of kind of how people are seen. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is going to make the process of reading it take a little bit longer. That's true. It will be a little bit longer to get through it, but I promise it will be a more valuable experience. You won't have to read the book twice to kind of get everything out of it, and you end up with kind of a bank of quotes that you can use for whatever. If you're a student, this is a great way to think up quotes you can use for like citations in papers. It's also, if you're having a discussion, like a book club discussion even, or a classroom discussion, you'll be able to like bring up specific quotes and cite the page numbers without having to flip through the book and everything. So I know Circe likes this one too. And you weird cat. So this is something that it does work. Now, everyone's brain works differently. You can write this down in like a notes app on your phone. I know writing it out, there's something about writing it that works better for me. I like using like mechanical pencil on soft notebook paper. And yeah, I like using mechanical paper or mechanical pencil on soft notebook paper. I like the scratch of it because it's just kind of just like a tactile thing for me. And it just kind of helps to cement things in my brain. And Circe has so much to say. She just has all the opinions, you guys. She has to make sure everyone's listening to her. Now she's knocking things off a counter. Okay, whatever. But this does work, I promise you. I used this all throughout grad school. I was reading like 7 to 10 books per semester, and it was a lot, and I was able to kind of keep track of where I was, and it made everything it's like chiseled it into my brain a little bit easier. You ridiculous cat. He's like, no one's paying attention to me. I just need attention. But I promise, this is something that genuinely does really help. Now, grad school is like a decade in the past now. And so what I use it for now is just for the act of, I just like doing it just because I'm used to it. But it gets things in my head a little bit better. And also it gives you kind of things to discuss. If you're ever doing like a review or something, it's so much easier to be able to like flip through the quotes, which will kind of sketch out like the character arcs in kind of a quick way. So it's a way to kind of breeze through something and like refresh your brain on it. And there'll be things that will kind of pop in your head. So it really helps with writing reviews. If you're in a book club, it really helps you kind of remember what you read. Or if you're doing like a buddy read or something, and you're doing a lot of other reading as well, being able to kind of connect with the book a little bit more definitely helps. And plus, I'm really addicted to notebooks. Like it's bad. I have so many of them. And so that's what I use a lot of them for. So it does help, and I really, really like it. Another benefit of this technique is that it really helps you get a feel for like an author's specific prose style. It lets you kind of enjoy the words a little bit more instead of flying over the top of it. You really get to kind of sink into it and really experience it. I know one thing that this really helped me see was the first time I read Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, my brain kind of connected them together. They're both, written by Brontë sisters. They're both 19th century. They're both Gothic. And so my brain kind of just were like, oh, well, this is the same kind of writing. But since I did this, when I reread them later in college, you get a sense that Emily Brontë is much more focused on creating a mood based around the environment. So you get a really good sense of where they are, the feel of things, the creek, the wind, the look of kind of the moors where they're set primarily. And it's very much about sort of the external reflecting the internal, whereas Charlotte Brontë, who wrote Jane Eyre, is a lot more focused on people and how kind of characters relate to one another, and how characters' inner monologue affects how they relate to other people when they're talking. So it's very much more about character. It's very internal. Both books are kind of gothic, but like when you think of Jane Eyre, you don't really think of like specific places or specific settings. You think of like the vibe of people. So you think of like strict school teachers and governesses, and you think of Rochester and his kind of weird vibe, and you think of the mad woman in the attic who's kind of hidden away in his dark secret. So it's more about kind of the psychological kind of gothic, whereas Emily Brontë there's still lots of psychological weirdness in her books, but she uses the environment to convey that. And so I was able to kind of see that difference, which I thought was really cool. And it's also it's really helpful if you read someone in college and you didn't connect with it. If you do this now and like try to reread it in this way, you might find that you'll sort of come to understand it. I know when I first read Margaret Atwood and Virginia Woolf early when I was an undergrad, I couldn't connect with it. I didn't really, there was something missing. And it never really made sense. And both of them are like favorite authors of me now, because when I was in grad school, I read them again, and I used kind of this quote technique, and I really got a feel for like how Margaret Atwood plays with language. She's very interested in like linguistics and how words, like the power of words and how words change. And Virginia Woolf is very stream of consciousness and very abstract. And I think writing quotes down and like looking for those kinds of things really helped ground me and really connected me with the characters in a way that I didn't really get before. And it just made all of her work so much more engaging. So I've read three of Virginia Woolf's books now, and have loved every one of them. I've got all the rest of hers, and I want to kind of read more of them. But doing this, it trains your brain to sort of look out for things. And after you've done it for a while, you might not even need to keep doing it. If you just if you are on the lookout for these kinds of quotes, they will help you sort of, it's like a trail of breadcrumbs that'll lead you through the book that will help you sort of connect to it more. So if there's a book that you are kind of intimidated to read, either because the language is dense or the book is really long, if you do this, it will make it less of a chore to read, because your brain, it's like there's a little serotonin hit every time you find a quote that fits the three criteria, and you'll want to write it down. And it kind of, it makes the process a little more active, and it makes it honestly a little bit more fun. I'm a nerd, so maybe that's just me, but I'm sharing this with the world because it did help me a lot, and it's fun. Plus, also, and this is always important, you will end up with a bank of quotes that you can use to make really gorgeous Instagram posts, aesthetics for books and all that kind of stuff. So, like, even if you're not in school, if you're like, way beyond that, like I am, even if you're just thinking about joining a book club or just doing it for yourself, this is a really good way to kind of actively read classics and kind of make it fun, and also help yourself to remember what it is that you read, so that when someone asks you about it, you're not like, I don't know, it was pretty, I remember that. But that's, you want to have that kind of maybe like connection to the book. So I hope this worked, and if it doesn't, that's fine too. Everyone's brains are different, but thank you so much for watching. I will be back next week, and in the meantime, enjoy your reading.